26, Wednesday, February 19th. Anderson?
Here.
Barlow? Boner?
Here.
Brennan?
Here.
Case?
Present.
Cooper? Prego?
Here.
Crum?
Here.
Dockstetter?
Here.
Driscoll?
Here.
French?
Here.
Guru?
Here.
Guru? Hicks? Hutchings? Ide? Jones? Kolb? Landon? Larson? McEwen? Nethercott? Olson? Pappas? Pearson? Rothfuss? Salazar? Schuler? Scott? Smith? Steinmetz? President Biden.
Here.
Mr. President, 31 present.
All right, 31 again. We're on a roll. Prayer by Pastor Vicky Martinez, Grace United Methodist Church.
Good morning. Let us pray. Creator God, today we pray for wisdom and guidance for the leaders of these your communities. Help them to make decisions that promote growth, unity, and prosperity for all. May they lead with integrity and compassion. Guide them to identify and address the needs that lie before them, infusing their service with intention and meaning. May their efforts bring about lasting change, empowering individuals, and strengthening the fabric of these communities that they represent. We ask that you grant them courage as they continue on this journey of service. At times there will be adversity, but God, may you strengthen each one's spirits and cast out fear, enabling all to overcome challenges and make a difference. May their service inspire bravery in others, igniting a collective courage that shapes our community. It is a privilege that these servants are brought here to serve the people as they bring their boldness and determination to make the right decisions. May their hearts be steadfast, their resolve unwavering. May their service be an instrument of your divine orchestration, connecting hearts and lives in ways beyond our understanding. With gratitude, we thank you for the privilege of being a vessel of your will. Lord, we thank you for the time and energy these servants have brought with them. We ask that you would add encouragement and stamina, for their journey is not over, but continuing on. May the peace of you be in their hearts and minds as they strive to serve the people. Inspire all of us to be actively engaged in our communities. Help us to volunteer our time, share our resources, and support one another. May our collective efforts lead to stronger, more vibrant communities. Further, I would ask for your divine protection over all the people. Shield us from harm and keep us safe from any danger. May your presence be a constant source of security and peace as we go about our day. In your Son's name, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Senator Olson, please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, fellow senators, today is Pastor Vicky Martinez's last day with the Senate, and we were happy to have her for 2 short days, and we appreciate your thoughtful prayers, and we ask that you continue to keep us in your prayers throughout the remainder of the session, and please join us again. We would love to have you back. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Reading correction and approval of journal. Will the reading clerk please read the journal committee report?
Mr. President, your journal committee reports that the journal of February 18, 2025 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Crum, chairman.
Are there any objections? There being none, the report is adopted. New business, there is no doctor of the day. Today in Wyoming history, in 1887, the last Black Hills coach left Cheyenne. In 1915, an act of legislation approved a tax on 3/8 of a million on each dollar of the assessed valuation of property in the state for the purposes of building additions to the Capitol in Cheyenne. The quote of the day, every winter has its spring, H. Tuttle. And the dad joke of the day, courtesy of Malou Guru. This is a doozy. What do you call a cow with no legs at all? Ground beef. Thank you. I don't write them, I just read them. Announcements for the remainder of the session, we will be voting on concurrence requests from the House to adopt House amendments to our Senate files. For our electronic members, the concurrence message is located on the right side of the bill page under the Bill Versions and Resources section. For members requiring a paper copy, our pages have made them available on the front table for your convenience. And now, ladies and gentlemen, if you notice, I have my Canadian pin and my red tie in honor of our good friends from north of the border. It is a great honor that we are joined today by Consul Stephen Green of Canada. Mr. Green works in the United States Mountain West Regional Office to strengthen regional trade and enhance political, economic, and cultural ties with Canada. Please help me in welcoming Consul Green to the Senate.
Thank you very much for the kind welcome. Distinguished senators of the Wyoming Legislature, I would like to begin by thanking you for allowing me this brief time. It is both an honor and a privilege to speak with you today. As mentioned, my name is Stephen Green, and I'm the head of the political section of the Consulate General of Canada, responsible for the US Mountain West. Our team represents the Government of Canada here in Wyoming, as well as in Colorado, Utah, Montana, and Kansas. I would like to also recognize my colleague, Delegate David Ruiz, who represents the province of Quebec here in Wyoming and in the Pacific Northwest. No two nations depend more on each other for their mutual prosperity and security than the United States and Canada. We are bound together not just by geography and history, but by our values. Our dedication to promoting freedom, opportunity, and an unshakable belief in the dignity of self-determination. We are proud to count the United States as our #1 friend, partner, and ally. No one wants the United States to succeed more than Canada does. On the economic front, Canada is Wyoming's biggest customer, buying roughly $430 million in goods and services last year. In terms of two-way trade, the Canada-Wyoming relationship is worth close to $1 billion in goods alone. And that's not including Canada's direct investments into Wyoming. More than 40 Canadian-owned businesses operate in the Cowboy State, creating jobs for hundreds of Wyomingites. This relationship is ever more important as we work to strengthen our regional supply chains and face global competition. But economic cooperation alone is not enough to ensure that all nations behave in good faith towards one another, which is why our two countries also work so closely together to defend our continent and safeguard our security. Through a long history of military cooperation, our alliance is steadfast. On D-Day, 14,000 Canadian troops took part in the invasion of Normandy, landing on Juno Beach. More than 40,000 Canadian Armed Forces members, I should say, also served in Afghanistan. And of course, we are partners in NORAD, the only binational military command in the world, and a cornerstone of Canada's relationship with the United States. We also have the longest shared border in the world. On both sides, our priority is a safe, secure border that facilitates trade and travel while preventing illegal migration and threats to security, including fentanyl and human trafficking. The scourge of fentanyl is something we need to continue to tackle on both sides of the border. We must use every tool we have to disrupt the flow of drugs and criminal activity into our communities. Through Canada's $1.3 billion border plan, we are doing just that. In fact, we've already seen an 89% drop in people crossing from Canada into the US illegally. We have invested in technology, personnel, and operational capabilities and are committed to doing more. Let us continue to strengthen this incredible partnership. Let us keep building, manufacturing, and growing together. Let's keep working together to keep our continent safe and secure. Let us keep developing our energy and critical mineral industries together so that we do not have to rely on hostile states for our prosperity and our security. And let us recognize that while we may have disagreements, we should not allow these to come between us. I will close with a reminder that if you ever have a question or request, you can reach out to me or our office. We are here to reaffirm the bonds of friendship and partnership between Canada and Wyoming, and to remind you that Canada is your trusted partner, as we know you are to us. Thank you for your time.
Well, Stephen, we would ask you to stick around real quick because we have a resolution we have for you, and we'll have the golden voice of the Senate, Randy, read it to you, because his voice is much more soothing than mine. So, Randy, take it away.
The 68th Legislature of the State of Wyoming honors Canada. A resolution providing for recognition and commemoration of Canada, thanking our northern ally for being the United States' closest friend and largest customer, and expressing great appreciation for an almost $1 billion economic and friendship bond between Canada and the state of Wyoming. Whereas Canada and the United States are essential partners with a long history of cooperation, mutual assistance, and defense coordination, and whereas Canada is the largest market for U.S. goods in the world, with nearly $2.7 billion in goods and services crossing the border each day in 2023, reflecting our joint investment and development of our integrated economies and networks. And whereas the United States is the single greatest investor in Canada, and Canada was the largest source of foreign direct investment, FDI, in the United States at the end of 2023. In addition, Canada is the single largest foreign supplier of energy to the United States. And whereas Canada and the United States share a land border that is more than 5,500 miles long and is the longest international border in the world, and whereas this border is bounded by 13 U.S. states, 7 Canadian provinces, and 1 territory, and more than 2 out of 3 Canadians live within 65 miles of the border, and whereas Canada and Wyoming have an important long-standing relationship, and whereas Canada is Wyoming's #1 export market, Wyoming exports $429 million in goods and services to Canada, including chemicals, energy, equipment and machinery, minerals and metals. And whereas Wyoming imports an even greater total of equipment and machinery, including railway trains and rolling stock, heating, cooling and refrigeration equipment, fertilizer, compressors and pumps, iron and steel, and fuel oil and chemicals, all of which are necessary to boost the needs of our essential growing industries. And whereas 47 Canadian-owned companies employ 750 workers in Wyoming, and whereas trade with Canada supports an additional 13,200 employees in Wyoming, and whereas we are partners in energy production, natural resource transport, and processing, companies such as TransAlta, Renewables, TC Energy, and Enbridge are major contributors to Wyoming's economic success, with such projects as the Express Pipeline, with the capability of exporting 310,000 barrels of crude oil, from Hardisty, Alberta to Casper, Wyoming, each day. And whereas our mutually beneficial relationship shall nurture loyalty and commitment, now therefore be it resolved by the undersigned members of the 68th Legislature of the State of Wyoming that we hereby express our unbounded friendship and unlimited admiration for the people of Canada. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be transmitted to the Consul General, Sylvain Fabi, and David Ruiz, delegate for the Quebec government, so that they can share it with our dear friends, the people of Canada. Signed on this 19th day of February, 2025, Senator Bo Beitman, President of the Wyoming Senate, Representative Chip Nyman, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Here, here.
Thank you so much. Despite all the turbulent winds that are blowing at the federal level with the tariffs and the immigration, the border and all that, here in Wyoming, you guys are our brothers and sisters. We love you, and we'll always have your back. And we look forward to maintaining this wonderful relationship with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one last thing, don't hold it against us when Team USA wins tomorrow night.
Mr. President, may I have privilege of the floor?
The floor is yours, sir.
I thought this topic might be appropriate given the celebration that we're having here this morning. Last night I had occasion to visit with our good friends from the north and reminded them that some of their animals got loose and got all the way down here. And I thought that maybe we might even suggest an interim topic to talk about returning all of those wolves back to Canada where they belong, and seemed to be okay received. You know, we had a little chuckle about it, but we'll be working on that, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. As long as they didn't howl too much about it, we're good. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. President. Point of personal privilege.
Of course. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Folks, joining us today in the Capitol is the staff from the Council of State Governments, CSG West, Edgar Ruiz, Karina West, and Delise Turner. And for those of you who may not be familiar, CSG West is a nonpartisan organization serving Western state legislatures. They convene policymakers from across the region and address and collaborate on a wide range of issues, as well as professional development and research. They're a great resource for us, and I would encourage you to get engaged with this organization. This year, our great state, under the leadership of Representative Minority Floor Leader Yin over down the hall, is serving as chair and is hosting the 78th CSG West annual meeting. Guess where? Beautiful Teton County, of course, on September 16th through the 19th. This annual meeting is the largest gathering of Western legislators, and we're honored to be hosting. Tonight at the Metropolitan from 5:30 to 8, you can show up and have a drink with these nice folks and learn about the event and learn about all the great things that CSG West does for us. Would you please welcome them? They're in the gallery right now. Say hello.
Welcome, CSG West, to Wyoming. Good to see you. Vice President Salazar.
Privilege, Mr. President.
The floor is yours.
So, honorable members, right in front of us is some extraordinary people that I want to introduce you to. This is the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. These are the individuals who keep us safe in our communities, who respond, who risk their lives on a daily basis. Without them, I don't know what kind of a society we would have without their leadership, their courage, their bravery. Please give them a warm Senate welcome. Thank you.
Welcome to the Senate. All right. Signing of enrolled acts. Oh, sorry, before we get to that, Senator Cole,
Yeah, privilege of the floor.
floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to give a special shout out to my sheriff, Sheriff John Grossnickel. I like to point out to the body that Sheriff Grossnickel had courage beyond what we had seen during the COVID outbreak and refused to comply with the orders about COVID mandates in Sweetwater County. And I think he deserves recognition for that and his stance for the public and what he believed the right thing to do was. So I'd like to give him a big hand.
Thank you, Senator Cole. You bet, Madam Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, but it's always helpful to be reminded of who makes the laws. Thank you, sheriffs and chiefs. It's always good to see you.
Thank you. All right. I think we're good. Signing of enrolled acts. Okay. We are at that order of business, signing enrolled acts. Senate Enrolled Act number 7.
Senate Enrolled Act Number 7, being original Senate File 42, Resort Hotel Liquor Licenses, an act relating to alcoholic beverages.
I am about to sign Senate Enrolled Act number 7, same being original Senate File 42. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act, House Enrolled Act number 1.
House Enrolled Act Number 1, being original House File 25, Vehicle Accident Reporting Amendments, an act relating to motor vehicles.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 1, being original House Bill 25. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 2.
House Enrolled Act Number 2, being original House Bill 27, Disabled Parking Windshield Placards Revision, an act relating to motor vehicles.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 2, same being House Bill 27. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 3.
House Enrolled Act Number 3, being original House Bill 92, Wyoming Livestock Board Memorandums of Understanding, an act relating to the Wyoming Livestock Board.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 3, being original House Bill 92. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 4.
House Enrolled Act Number 4, being original House Bill 14, Solid Waste Municipal Cease and Transfer Funding, an act relating to the prioritization of cease and transfer projects for municipal solid waste facilities.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 4, being original House Bill 14. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 5.
House Enrolled Act Number 5, being original House Bill Number 22. An act relating to Homeland Security.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 5, being original House Bill 22. I have so signed. House Bill, or House Enrolled Act, oops, I almost dropped it. House Enrolled Act number 6.
House Enrolled Act Number 6, being original House Bill 30, driver's licenses and IDs revisions, an act relating to motor vehicles.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 6, being original House Bill 30. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 7.
House Enrolled Act Number 7, being original House Bill 41, Environmental Quality Irrevocable Letters of Credit, an act relating to environmental quality.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 7, being original House Bill 41. I have so signed. House Bill, or House Enrolled Act number 8.
House Enrolled Act Number 8, being original House Bill 61, State Land Lease Preference Amendments, an act relating to state land leasing.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 8, being original House Bill 61. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 9.
House Enrolled Act Number 9, being original House Bill 69, Foreign Adversary Ownership of or Control of Business Entities, an act relating to corporations, partnerships, and associations.
I'm about to sign House Enrolled Act number 9, being original House Bill 69. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 10.
House Enrolled Act Number 10, being original House Bill 73, Recreation Safety, Rock Climbing, an act relating to recreational safety.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 10, being original House Bill 73. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 11.
House Enrolled Act Number 11, being original House Bill 75, Coal Severance Tax Rate, an act relating to severance tax.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 11, being original House Bill 75. I have so signed. House Enrolled Act number 12.
House Enrolled Act Number 12, being original House Bill 82, Provider Enrollment Standards, an act relating to the insurance code.
I am about to sign House Enrolled Act number 12, being original House Bill 82. I have so signed. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives. Mr. President, these messages are dated February 18, 2025. And they are House concurring with Senate amendments to the following bills. Message number 304. The House did concur on Senate amendments to House Bill number 4, snowmobile registration and user fees. Ayes 38, noes 22, excused 2. Message number 306. The House did concur on Senate amendments to House Bill number 23, surrender driver's license repeal. Ayes 60, excused 2. Message number 307. The House did concur on House Bill number 45, removing otters as protected animals. Ayes 53, noes 7, excused 2. Message number 308. The House did concur on House Bill number 54, Chancery Court Judges, District and Circuit Court Assistants. Ayes 60, excused 2. Mr. President, the following messages report concurrence failure. Message number 305. The House failed to concur on Senate amendments to House Bill number 11, Manufacturing Sales and Use Tax Exemption Amendments. Ayes 11, noes 49, excused 2. Message number 310. The House has appointed conferees to meet with the Light Committee number 1 from the Senate on amendments to House Bill 11. House conferees are Representative Locke, Chairman, Representative Davis, and Representative Stivar. Message number 309. Mr. President, the House failed to concur on Senate amendments to House Bill number 28, Commercial Driver's License Revisions. Ayes 2, noes 58, excused 2. Message number 311. Mr. President, the House appointed conferees to meet with a like committee number 1 from the Senate on amendments to House Bill 28. House conferees are Representative Tarman, Chairman, Representative Banks, and Representative Wiley. Sincerely, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Concurrences?
Message number 292. Mr. President, Senate File 13, Reading Assessment and Intervention Amendments passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 61, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Sincerely, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Senator Schuler, if you are ready on message number 292, requesting concurrence on Senate File 13, I will have that read. Well, it's already been read in, so.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move concurrence on message number 292 and urge you to vote yes. Really, all they did with this was did a little wordsmithing. They added, instead of intervention program, they put for students at risk for reading failure in a couple different places. Page 3, same thing. Instead of appropriate reading competence, they put found to be at high risk for reading failure. And the only other substantial change they made, which wasn't really substantial, they just put, they inserted any time between the middle of the school year in kindergarten through the end of grade 3. They just didn't want the kindergartners walking in, being tested right away, and then having to jump into an intervention right away. So I think they were good changes, and I would urge us to vote yes.
Thank you. The motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 13 and vote aye. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Concurrence roll call vote, Senate File 13, Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Aye. Jones? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 13, 31 aye.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate File 13. Message number 299.
February 18, 2025. Mr. President, Senate File 49, Tangible Personal Property Index and Depreciation, passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 57, noes 4, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Sincerely, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Randy. Senator McEwen, if you're ready on message 299, requesting concurrence on Senate File 49.
This is the dreaded meat grinder bill. 3 years later, it passed. They changed some of the language in a couple sentences, but didn't change any of the intent of the bill.
You need to move it, please, sir. Yep, I'm working on it here. Senator McEwen, could you move concurrence on this?
I move concurrence on Senate File 49, Tangible Personal Property Index and Depreciation.
And how do you want us to vote, sir?
Yes.
Okay, continue.
They changed a couple of the words in a couple sentences, but none of the bills changed at all. It still takes tangible personal property down to 20% and holds it in place without a trending factor increasing for years. So, trust me, I would ask you to vote for the meat grinder. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. The motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 49 and vote aye. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence vote, Senate File 49, Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crego? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstader? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Aye. Jones? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Senate File 49, 31 aye.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate File 49. Senator Nethercott, are you ready on message number 302?
Mr. President, I move for concurrence on message number 302. Good senators,
We need to read it in, but
please read it in.
yes.
February 18, 2025. Mr. President, Senate file Joint Resolution Number 3 commemorating Nello Taylor Ross passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 50, noes 11, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments.
Thank you. Back to you, Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the Senate to concur on message number 302. Good senators, this is Senate Joint Resolution 3 commemorating Nellie Taylor Ross. Good senators, the House really went into the history books here and provided some extra detail on some of the historical facts concerning our first female governor for this state. A couple of factual changes, but most notably that she won that election with 55.12% of the vote. So with that, Mr. President, I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate Joint Resolution 3 and vote aye. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence vote, Senate Joint Resolution Number 3. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crego? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstader? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Aye. Jones? Aye. Kolb? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate Joint Resolution 3, 31 aye.
By your vote, you have concurred on Senate Joint Resolution 3. Message 303.
February 18, 2025. Mr. President, Senate File 40, zoning protest petition amendments passed on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 52, noes 9, excused 1. House respectfully asks the Senate to concur by adopting amendments. Signed, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. I don't see the Vice President, but I'll kick it over to you, Senator Garou.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move concurrence on message number 303 and urge you to vote no. Good members, I know our Appropriations Chair is off the floor, but this bill, the protest petition bill, actually came from the Regulatory Reduction Task Force, of which I was the co-chair, so I'm going to bring it before him. We passed this bill out a couple weeks ago, on a unanimous vote. There were two folks that were missing. And we sent it over, and they actually struggled with some of in committee, in appropriations, they struggled with a couple of the same things we did about 2/3 versus 50% on how to initiate a protest petition for a development. I was there and I testified on the bill, walked through the bill with the committee and talked through and actually agreed with them about some of the changes. Then after public comment was closed, they came with another amendment, an amendment that was not contemplated in the legislation, was not contemplated by the committee, regulatory reduction, not contemplated by this body, not commented on by this body. Tried to make comment on it and was not recognized. It passed unanimously and was sent. The problem is that no one got to see this amendment, no one got to speak to it, no one got to testify on it, for it or against it. I wonder about its germaneness. That's an arguable point. But frankly, to me, this is more of a Senate matter about just process. So I'm urging you to vote no, so we can go down and talk to our friends down the hall about it. Just want to talk, say, where did this amendment come from? How did you come to have it here? And how does it fit the bill? Since we never got to have that discussion. I think it's fair, I think it's reasonable, and I urge you to vote no on concurrence. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 40 and vote no. Chief? Oh, excuse me, didn't see you over there. Thank you. Senator Smith.
I urge you to vote for this. It's really, we add to House bills as they come over here. And this is just one amendment. It's not a bunch of amendments, and it is germane. It's about zoning. It's actually about taxing. It says that you can't add housing mitigation fees onto the builder. So we want more housing in Jackson. We want more construction. We want producers to run. And we're just saying that if there's going to be a tax, which a mitigation fee, which is basically a tax that forces them to pay for the housing of others, that it needs to be approved through this body and or a constitutional amendment. So I'm on it for this. And I think we should pass it.
Thank you. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good senators, when one of our senators stands up and says, a serious irregularity happened in the process, we stand by the Senate. We stand together. Now is a difficult time with crossover, but now it's very important to stand with the Senate and stand together. I appreciate mentions about germaneness, but the process wasn't followed. This is a way to correct it. This is a way to go back for the House and the Senate to come together to discuss those issues and bring it back for the Senate's consideration. I urge your no vote and to stand with the Senate together.
Thank you. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I understand the objection to the process, but I hope in the end, I think they did good work even if they didn't follow the right procedure, because there's a real problem with affordable housing, and these government fees and requirements are one of the major problems, and they are attempting to get it dealt with. So I can understand the desire to have a no vote and go back to conference, but I hope the result will be what the House produced, because I think they really did good work. Mr. President, if we're we're trying to get more affordable housing, we need to reduce some of the government burdens that are in the way, and this is what they're doing.
Thank you. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I urge you to vote no. Same reasons as the majority leader. I think it's critical that we support a motion recommendation by the sponsors of legislation. Process is important, but also just respecting the sponsors' desires to go down and work this. Encourage the no vote.
Thank you. Further discussion? Not seeing anybody. Okay, the motion is that the Senate do concur on Senate File 40 and vote no. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Concurrence vote, Senate File 40. Anderson? No. No. Barlow? No. Boner? No. No. Brennan? No. No. Case? No. No. Cooper? No. No. Crago? No. No. Crum? No. Dockstader? No. No. Driscoll? No. No. French? No. No. Guru? No. No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. No. Cole? No. Landon? No. No. Larson? No. No. McEwen? No. No. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? No. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 40, 1 aye, 30 no.
By your vote, you have failed to concur on Senate File 40. Conference committee will be appointed. Chairman Guru, Senators Ide and Landon. Reports from standing committees.
February 18, 2025. Mr. President, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 172 engrossed, repeal gun-free zones and preemption amendments. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Crago, Crum, Hicks, Colband, Olson. Senator Olson, Chairman. Following messages are dated February 19, 2025. Committee number 4, Education, to whom was referred House Bill 18, Career Technical Education Funding. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Brennan, Rothfuss, Schuler, and Scott. Excused, Senator Olson. Senator Schuler, Chairman. Committee number 4, Education, to whom was referred House Bill 46, Homeschool Freedom Act. Respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Brennan, Rothfuss, Schuler, and Scott. Excused, Senator Olson. Senator Schuler, Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Schuler, do you have a re-referral for me?
Yes, Mr. President, I would request that House Bill 235, engrossed, Career Technical Education Equipment Supplies, be re-referred. And also House Bill 18, Career Technical Education Funding, be re-referred.
We can do 18, but I think 285 is
I was just going to
illegal.
say 235. Okay, we'll hold off on that one.
So House Bill 18, absent objection, is re-referred to committee number 2, Appropriations. Thank you. All right, bills on second reading. House Bill 17, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 17, Career Technical Education Equipment Grants Amendments, sponsored by the Education Committee.
House Bill 17, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 39, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 39, Property Tax Refund Program Revisions, sponsored by the Revenue Committee.
House Bill 39, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 40, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 40, Sales and Use Tax Revision, sponsored by the Revenue Committee.
House Bill 40, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 132, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 132, engrossed, annual permits for specified commercial loads, sponsored by Representative Smith.
House Bill 132, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 168, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 168, engrossed, cultivated meat prohibition, sponsored by Representative Eklund.
House Bill 168, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 214, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 214, local government payments, electronic payments, sponsored by Representative Thayer.
House Bill 214, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Joint Resolution 1, first reading of the joint resolution.
House Joint Resolution 1, amending Wyoming's Act of Admission for Earnings, sponsored by Capital Finance Committee.
House Joint Resolution 1, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Bills on third reading and final passage. House Bill 86, third reading of the House bill.
House Bill 86, Public Property and Buildings Amendments, sponsored by the Appropriations Committee, an act relating to public property and buildings.
There is an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read it in?
House Bill 86, third reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 1, line 13 after.
Senator Guru.
Sorry, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 86, thank you, and ask for your favorable consideration. Folks, I brought this on first reading for, this is the bill to work on a global project through our state, folks that work on state buildings, to do a kind of a long-term global look at major maintenance. To do it, they want to do a study, they want to get some software, they wanted to try to put this together. The bill has been talked about and debated, but I did want one more time to ask you, and today, since it's Thursday, come in with a special low price at 500, was it Wednesday? Oh, it's Wednesday already, oh, we're good. This is my Thursday special. Anyway, Wednesday special. $500,000, marked down from $750,000 to do this study, to see if we can get this done. This is a really important project, Mr. President, and to do it, could save millions over the life of these buildings. And we really want to try to give them tools to be able to do it and do it effectively. So I'd urge you to accept this amendment to approve $500,000 so they can get the project rolling. Thank you, Mr. President. Go ahead and stand for any questions.
Any questions on Senator Gru's blue light special? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, on and against this amendment, and so just a little edification. The department has a significant, and maybe members of our appropriation.
Oops.
I don't think there's anything that would preclude the department from using those contingency funds to fund this study, to do the necessary need. Maybe some member of the Appropriations Committee can tell us how much is in the contingency fund, but it's significant into the millions of dollars. So I think the funding's available there if they prioritize it. So I would request that you resist this amendment.
Further discussion on the amendment? Back to you, Senator Gru.
Thank you, Mr. President, and my good friend from Bags is right. There is significant funds, and they probably could bring this money out. But that fund is also for maintenance on buildings. And so when we take it out of there, to fund this, it will be money that will not be there to fund your school, to fund your cafeteria, to fund whatever is needed in major maintenance, a new HVAC system, a new pump on the swimming pool, whatever it is, may not be there. And so that's why we ask for this money and ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're voting on third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 86. All those in favor, please say aye.
Roll call.
Roll call on the money, huh? Well, just warming up the vocal cords, I guess. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Third reading amendment number 1, House Bill 86, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? No. Boner? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? No. Driscoll? Aye. French? No. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott? No. Olson? No. Pappas? No. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Smith? No. Steinmetz? No. President Biteman?
No.
No. Cooper, aye to no. Driscoll, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 3 aye, 28 no.
Third reading amendment number 1 has failed. We're back on the bill. Discussion on the bill. Discussion on the bill. All right, question being called. House Bill 86, having been read 3 separate times. The question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 86, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Biteman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 86, 30 aye, 1 no.
House Bill 86, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 86 has passed the Senate. House Bill 166, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 166, State Auditor Payment Transparency, sponsored by Representative Bratton, an act relating to the administration of the government.
Discussion on the bill? Question being called. House Bill 166, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
House Bill 166, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow? Aye. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks?
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones. Aye. Cole. Aye. Landon. Aye. Larson. Aye. McEwen. Aye. Nethercott. Aye. Olson. Aye. Pappas. Aye. Pearson. Aye. Rothfuss. Aye. Salazar. Aye. Schuler. Aye. Scott. Aye. Smith. Aye. Steinmetz. Aye. President Beitman.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 166, 31 aye.
House Bill 166, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 66 has passed the Senate. House Bill 199, third reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 199 engrossed, an act relating to education, sponsored by Representative Andrew.
There is an amendment. Would the reading clerk please read in the amendment?
House Bill 199, third reading amendment number 1 to an engrossed copy, page 10, lines 9 through 17, delete.
Thank you. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 199 and ask for the body's favorable consideration. Members of the Senate, I'd ask you to refer to page 10, lines 9 through 17 of the bill. That's what the amendment deals with. When we voted to include pre-K back in the bill on second reading, we also added this provision, which was a leftover, I guess, Mr. President, from previous discussions on similar concepts, where we create this artificial diversion of funds of 80% going to K through 12 and 20% going to pre-K. What the amendment does is it simply eliminates that diversion, where you say, 80% K through 12, 20% to pre-K, and we're just making it, if you vote for the amendment, where everybody's treated the same, regardless of whether you're pre-K or K through 12. That's all the amendment does, just eliminating that 80-20 split, so everybody's treated the same. No more, no less, just basically going back and deleting, once again, on page 10, lines 9 through 17. So this was left over from primarily a political compromise that was reached last year. I don't think there's any defensible policy here. That was just what it took to get the bill across the finish line a year ago. That's why it's there. Mr. President, I suggested there's no need for it, and we can go ahead and remove that division. So that's what the amendment does. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Boner. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the conversation with a good sponsor of this. This amendment's fine. It does reverse some language from the amendment that I put in place with pre-K, but there's no damage done here, and the explanation's appropriate.
All right, thank you. Further discussion? Since you're ready for the question, all in favor of Senator Boner's motion to adopt third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 199, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Amendment has been adopted. We're back on the bill. Discussion on the bill, Senator Landon.
Mr. President, thank you. First of all, I want to commend all of those who have great passion for this issue. I think most of you know I spent a lot of my life in and around institutions of education, and I'm very supportive of anything we can do, and that includes on this particular issue. I have always voted for school choice. I really believe in it, and I think there's opportunity in this module as well. I mean, we've got students who I think can benefit from environments like these, especially those who are marginalized in some way. So I want to tip my hat to all of those who have such passion for this issue and for this bill. I've kind of watched on the sidelines and listened to the debate, and I've been kind of fascinated by where this bill has gone and where we are today. And I mostly want to just talk to my folks back home in Natrona County. That's who I represent, Mr. President. And I've got to be honest with you, I have been overwhelmed by the emails that I've received from my hometown. and they run easily 10-1 against this bill. I've been listening to you. I have not had the time to answer every one of those emails, which I always try to do, but absolutely impossible on this one. Mr. President, I'm not quite sure why on this issue the Wyoming Senate feels the urgency to have the accelerator all the way to the floor with no guardrails going 100 miles an hour. And that's what it feels like we're doing here. I'm not sure why we don't. I've heard debate on the floor about we don't means test anything. Of course we do. How do you think we figure out free and reduced lunch? How do you think we figure out the programs that are available for our little guys that are maybe a little underprivileged? There's a lot of that. There's been a lot of things thrown around on the floor that are just kind of puzzling and making it very difficult for me to get there on this one, Mr. President. I don't often vote against education, but today I'm just really struggling to get to this bill. It's a lot of money. And frankly, by the time it comes out of a conference committee, we may not have any expectations out of the students that we're sending quite a bit of state dollars to. So for that reason, and for all of those folks back home who have reached out to me, I'll be a no vote on this bill today. Thank you.
Landon? Senator Scott?
Mr. President, and I represent Natrona County, different part of Natrona County. And I see an urgency in getting started on this bill. We've got too many kids that are being left behind by our current K-12 system, Mr. President. We've got kids that need to have an option so they can have a little different kind of instruction because they're not succeeding with the current ones. Mr. President, and we have a need to, in this area, to find out what we can and what we cannot do. There's good constitutional arguments on both sides, and we're only going to find out, Mr. President, by trying it with a real live case and seeing what the Wyoming courts will say. So, and with the amendment that was put on yesterday, we are taking a step into the whole pre-kindergarten area that has traditionally been private, where a lot of the experts say that if you want to improve literacy, that's one of the things you can do. So this bill gives us a further push in that area. So for all those reasons, Mr. President, I think we need to adopt this particular bill.
Thank you. Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. President, on and against. It's been a good debate, and there are parts of it. I've learned a lot this week, and I do like to thank everybody because, we've gone back and forth on means testing and all that, and I think actually it's done some good, at least to crystallize in my mind, but there's still a couple of points, Mr. President, I can't quite cross the Rubicon on. The first, 30 million reasons, each of them about big as a dollar bill. I heard a lot of talk when it came over that we were going to cut back on this. We were going to talk about a pilot program. We were talking about 11 million. All of a sudden it hit appropriations at 30. Okay, hold on. But that's a big number. That's a big number when we're talking, cut. We're talking about conservative values. You're talking about spending less. $30 million on a program that I don't think has some of the sideboards that we'd like to have. You know, and I've heard, and we've all heard from our school districts about the issues about what happens when someone drops out, what that does to the ADM on the school side, how these things work. I'm glad that we got some testing in. I think that was an important fact, but boy, there's just one piece, and now my screen went dark. I think it's on page 15 around line 7, where it says the superintendent, and it says that in language, so I feel I can use it, can accept donations for any reason, for setting up the program, for doing advertising for the program, and for the program itself. Any money from anywhere. Who are these people? Who can give money? We talk about, my company, I own a corporation, I can't buy donuts like I bought every year, every election year, and put down at the clerks, even when mostly when I wasn't running, down there to say, here's some donuts for counting votes. That's illegal now. We made it illegal because we're so worried about foreign interference in our elections. But here, at another time, in another place, we allow unlimited, unfettered, uncontrolled, unscripted millions to be taken, to be given and administered by one person, one individual only, who will decide. And I know she's the current holder of that office, a great person, know her well, she's a good gal, and I like her a lot. But that's not, this bill says forever. That's the way this works. So I just want to make sure everybody understands, no matter who it is, no matter what their ilk, no matter what their political persuasion, unlimited funding can go. No, we just want to put a little thing in the lunchbox, or maybe a little flyer in there. Who are these people? I think that in and of itself, just really, no one's talked about it, no one's admission, it just seems to slide right on through. That scares the heck out of me, and I think it should scare the heck out of you. On and against, thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you. Discussion? Senator Cooper?
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand what we're trying to do with this bill, and I support a lot of the ideas of it. But when it goes back to the ADMs and my small communities, and my small schools, it is very hurtful. I do like the idea that we brought forward the pre-K yesterday. That helped the bill. But I still have to stand by my school districts. We're putting out some really good students in my area. I'm proud of our schools, and I stand beside them. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Senator Smith.
Mr. President, there's certainly diversity in this state. In my district, it's 10-1 in favor of this bill. I'll just say that I've been paying close attention to school districts since my wife got on a school board, and the scores in the state have been stagnant at best. If you take out Sheridan and Carbon County, maybe one or two others, we've been stagnant or down. And how do you fix that? Well, competition is always the solution. That's the American way. I will say that everybody says, well, I'm not an attorney unless they want to make a point of law, and then all of a sudden they understand constitutional law. Well, I haven't thrown this around. I am an attorney, and I can tell you that I've read that case at Espinosa, and it's clear that their constitution is nearly verbatim our Constitution in terms of what people say will be a challenge is unconstitutional, and the Supreme Court ruled that it is not. It's a violation of, once that money goes to the parents, it's a violation of their constitutional right of free exercise of religion, and the school's exercise of free, and also the school for that matter. So regardless of where that money goes, that is not going to be an argument that will hold up in court, and so that should not factor. Now there might be other factors for you, but for me, it's about competition. So just for the record, my kids have mainly been publicly school educated. We pulled some of them out and educated them privately for a little bit, but that's because we gave them what they needed. And that's kind of what this bill does, is it allows each family to decide what their kid needs. And I can tell you that, everybody thinks their kids are super smart. Well, yeah, but by being able to give our kids what they needed, several of our kids were able to score in the 30s on their ACTs. The point, of course I'm a proud dad, but the point is if we hadn't been able to do that for our kids, I doubt that would have happened. And this frees that up for a lot of parents a lot of families who have not had that option. So I'm on for this, and guys, competition is always the key. Competition is the key to everything, and we shouldn't be afraid of it. We should embrace it, and we don't need rails on that.
Thank you, Senator Smith. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, I'm also from Natrona County, and I think our schools do a great job of educating our kids, and I noticed that they score high on all the national measurements that we participate in, so I congratulate them on doing a great job. I also talked to some people. I have one homeschooler that really wants this and really wants some money. But I talked to about 6 of them that said, stay out of our business. We don't want any strings attached with this money. We know that if we get the money from you, there'll be some strings attached and you'll want something from us. So don't do this for us. So for that reason, I'm not for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. As with every bill that I look at, I always start in the middle with a neutral view, as I did with this one. And I try to see both sides. I try to do some research. I did quite a bit of research on this, even before we started amending it, even before it got to committee. And I had some concerns, mainly about universal school choice. I'm all for school choice, I really am. And I think we have quite a few choices right now for our kids in Wyoming. What we didn't have tied to it was money. And that will make a difference with some of our folks. I was inching closer to where I could actually maybe vote for this bill until we took out the income-based tiers, and that, I think, as I've said before, I think will make it unconstitutional. I think it's going to really muddy the waters with this bill. I think there are kids out there that are going to need this, though, and I'm happy to see, if it does go through, that there'll be some of those kids that might take advantage of this, and this might really help them. I've never once thought about what is this going to do to public schools. A lot of people probably think, well, you're a retired public school teacher, and that's not my concern. I don't think there maybe will be as many that take advantage of this as we think, but I could be wrong. But I think there are a group of folks out there that, that maybe take advantage of it, and if it helps them and it helps their kid to further their education and be successful, I'm all for it. But will it make public education better? No, I don't think it's really going to make a lot of difference. Maybe their scores may go up a little more, I don't know. But the interesting thing is, as someone just mentioned a minute ago, I heard from probably 5 or 6 of my homeschool folks who said the same thing. They're really not interested. They've already been homeschooling for years. They're not interested in this money. They really don't. They don't really want to see this bill move forward. And so, taking a look at that, and then also taking a look at just what will this do to our budget. That's my biggest concern, is how will this impact funding? And I don't know. I think it's out there for anybody to guess. And I have been known to be a betting person, but I'm going to bet that it might not be as big a deal as what we think. But I am open for the idea of, let's see what happens. What I would prefer, and I've said this from the very beginning, is that we would have left the bill that we had passed last year to see what it did, to see really, so we could get some data. And we're not going to do that. Like I said, we're going to go from 0 to 60 on this. We're going to put the accelerator down. Obviously, my constituents are against this. Mine are about 20 to 1. And the only thing I'm kind of glad that we're moving forward here is that I might not get quite as many emails in the next few days, because I haven't been able to keep up with them, and I do apologize for that. But like I said, I think the intent is good. I think the idea is good. But again, if you do some research and you take a look at some of the states that have gone universal, there are some of them that are not doing well, and it's really affected their budgets overall. There are some that are doing well. They're in the early, start of theirs. So we'll see how it goes. And but again, I'm on and against this bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I want to start by saying that I'm a product of Wyoming Public Schools, and I think that we do have phenomenal public schools all across Wyoming. I believe that the public schools, there are great ones in my district, just the same as everybody else believes that the public schools are great in their districts. And I want to start by saying that just because you support school choice doesn't mean that you stop supporting your public schools. They go hand in hand. They don't, there's this idea of competition, of course, but there's also an idea that they can grow together. And I think that we should embrace that. So I do want to make a few comments about the emails because that's been brought up several times. And before this bill came to the Education Committee on the Senate, I received probably hundreds of emails as well. But the bill that came across from the House is not the bill that you have in front of you today. So I would submit to you that I watched those emails taper off myself as this bill moved through the Senate process. The emails became less and less. And so if we're going to really truly use them as a metric to try to measure how we're going to vote, I think that the emails were based on the House bill, not based on the Senate bill. So I would respectfully reject that that's an accurate representation of how our voters feel. I would also say that this issue is an issue in Wyoming that has been polled at the doors, and over 63% of your constituents are in favor of school choice. That's a really good metric to use as opposed to emails based on a bill that doesn't even exist anymore. As far as the guardrails go, there can always be more guardrails, but the Senate did put guardrails on this bill. We made it so that the assessments apply to anyone receiving this scholarship. That's the same guardrail that we put in place on the old bill. It's the same guardrail we have now. I don't know what else you could use to measure how a student's doing, but at the very least, we've done that. So I do think that improved the bill. I think we can all agree, or most of us will agree, that pre-K, keeping that in place improves the bill as well. At the end of the day, Mr. President, I do support school choice. I think that every parent has a fundamental right to decide where and how their child is educated. And anything that we can do as a body to move that power, the parental empowerment, up a scale, we should do. And this bill does it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Olson. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate the comments of the previous speaker. And just to further iterate along those lines, that this is basically a $10 million appropriation. Remember, we already have $20 million set aside for what would be a $30 million a year program as it currently stands. But furthering along the discussion that we're also supporting public schools, and we consistently do that. Let's put that in a little bit of context, Mr. President. We're looking to increase public school funding by $48 million just this 1 year. So the estimated cost of judgment for our public schools far exceeds the totality of this program. So let's remember that context. I appreciate the concerns brought by my desk about rural districts who are already losing enrollment. We've been losing enrollment in our public schools for 10 years, Mr. President. Yet the funding increases every year because of those cost adjustments. So that dynamic will continue. This is not a attack on public schools as has been propagated, especially when we received this bill in its original form. We're continuing to do both. And this is a relatively minor investment in every student in the state of Wyoming compared to the billions upon billions of dollars that we spend on our public schools. $30 million is money well spent. The reality is that I've had the opportunity to represent many school districts throughout the state, get part of the opportunity of being a rural legislator. I've seen them do well, I've seen them go downhill, I've seen them go uphill, depending on local dynamics. Our test scores are great. They've always been great in our public schools. Our school teachers do an excellent job, but we can't guarantee that those statewide scores that we hear are going to be an accurate reflection of every last district and every last student's experience within that district. That's why this program is so important, to put the needs of the student before the needs of the bureaucracy that we've created in this chamber and the one down the hall, and to make sure that we continue to improve upon this already excellent system that we have at instructing our kids in the state.
Thank you. Let's go to Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, thank you. Just some rough comments. I'll be a yes vote. I'm in favor of choice, as everybody knows in here. It's kind of interesting. But some observations and thoughts going forward. We heard from the senator from the Great Northwest about it going from 11 million to 30 million. We just heard we got 20 million, it's 10 million. Folks, this is ongoing. We're not talking about one time 10 million, one time 20 million. My question is, at what point are all of you willing to spend and how much? Because as this grows, the numbers I've heard get bigger. So here's the raw numbers of it. It's kind of interesting. Take 30 million, divide it by scholarship, it's 4,285 students. We've already got 500 in the pre-K, so you're now down to 3,700 students. We got 3,917 homeschoolers in the state right now. That doesn't count the other virtual academies and the others, which, by the way, it's pretty much a given that a good part of the virtual academies are gonna go after this money. They're coming, folks. It's money for them and it's there. So my deal for all of you is look inwardly. For all the education folks out there listening, you're telling me you're threatened by it. We're not spending your money. We're spending general fund money. Folks, this is a new path for the Wyoming legislature. We're going to spend general fund money for scholarships. I hear, and I'm looking out at my conservative friends, and they talk every time about, oh my God, how can we afford this? What can we do? You're going to see bills coming up on spending more money. How do we do it? I'm going to ask you, how far are you willing to go on this? Because this is going to affect everything from your hospitals to your highways to your law enforcement statewide. As this grows, and it will grow, I believe it's going to be a good program. We'll put sideboards on it, it'll grow. We already are underwater. I will represent to you that I'm on your appropriations committee. Next year when we come here, you're going to blame part of it on K-12 with ECAs. You're going to blame part of it on fires. But as we go into next year for our biennium, we're not going to have money to spend. It's gone. We're going to start the year with the goldenrod, not with this huge savings or this huge amount of dollars. You're going to start figuring out how you start at zero or close to it. It's a word of warning. This is potentially a path for a tax. All of you hardcore conservative end, which I consider myself one, this is a path to put yourself on raising taxes. And you're going to vote for it. I'm going to vote for it. But you need to understand when it comes time, we have to pay for what we fund. And it's pretty hard to defund a program once we've started. We've all learned about that. This is the same as an exemption. It can be really hard when you got twice the students want in and you say, you know, we got to go from 30 million to 15 because we don't have money. And by the way, we've done that with ECAs and K-12. So a word of thought, I'm participating with you. I'm in the boat. But you really need to think about what the impacts are going forward, because the hard decisions get made in this body when we're out of money. And it's kind of funny. I look backwards through the time I've been the last 4 years, and we've been times of surplus. And the people in the state think we have a lot of money. They talk about $30 billion. They talk about surpluses. Folks, the surpluses are gone. My belief is unless we hit some kind of major deal that we have a big influx of cash, the surpluses are over in the state of Wyoming. The hard decisions start for sure, if not next biennium, one after. So think long and hard about where we go and what we're doing to ourselves and our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to, holy cow. Let's go to Senator Hicks first.
Mr. President, I want to put in context of the cost associated for this program. So if you go to your fiscal profile, you'll see in the School Foundation Program account for this biennium, we've allocated $2.3 billion. And so you take that cost and you say, what's the cost of this program at $30 million? It's a 1.3%. Let me repeat that. It's a 1.3% increase to the cost of education. That's the fiscal impact associated with the total education package. That's just K through 12, that $2.3 billion in this biennial budget. So in the context of our overall cost for education for K through 12, it's an increase of 1.3%. So just keep that in context of relative to everything else we put into the programs.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, one thing that I want to make sure everybody understands is this isn't a choice between do we have an ESA program or do we not have an ESA program. There's already one in statute. We passed it last year. Think back. The key here, the consideration is which of the two programs is the choice for the day? What are the differences that we're seeing? Mr. President, the key difference at this point is that what we have before us is a universal program with no means testing. And what's in statute right now is a means-tested program with 150% of federal poverty level. So it's not a brand new program that we're talking about. Are you for or are you against education savings accounts? It is, are you a supporter of them being universal? In other words, regardless of income, everybody has access to it. We've talked extensively about constitutional concerns with that, whether the state of Wyoming is allowed to be handing out money like that to anybody regardless of the income. We have the support for the poor provision in the Constitution, which makes it potentially constitutional. We understand the constitutionality of handing over finances and resources related to education to facilities that are outside of the government control, non-public schools, private schools. We've been through all of that. So the question is, do we want to provide $7,000 per year to individuals that are not in need? They can afford the programs that they're working on. They can afford to send their kids to private schools, and if they make that choice. Or do we focus on being a little more fiscally conservative, spending a little bit less, because we are right now, it's fewer dollars in the current program, and focusing on those in need. We had an opportunity to slightly expand the means testing, and we reversed that. But right now it's means tested in statute. When we talk about the cost associated with this program, you know, there's one other warning I think we should take in mind, consistent with the good senator from the northeastern part of the state. A few years ago, we debated on this floor our statewide authorized charter schools. And when we debated those, one of the key provisions in that legislation was that those schools would only cost, I think it was 85%, it was 80 to 85% of what a standard ADM was. That was in statute, that they would be funded at a lower level than our standard ADM. That was a selling point. This is cheaper. This is a cost savings. This will be great. At that point in time, I said on the floor, it's unconstitutional to provide inequity of educational opportunity through funding, and that we'll come back in a couple of years and we'll raise that money right back up to where it is. Well, that didn't take long. In fact, it took fewer years than I possibly could have imagined. It was the next year that we reversed that inequitable, unconstitutional provision of law. Mr. President, I don't see how this stays at $7,000. And I say that for the same reason. If it's inequitable, it's unconstitutional when we're talking about education funding. That's always going to be how it goes. So $7,000 next year, it was $6,000 this year, to be clear. We're at $6,000 today. This bill takes it to $7,000. This conversation will continue. Lawsuits may be filed. But I see no end until it's an equivalent ADM. And Mr. Chairman, that's because that's the constitutional approach. That's fair. So again, something that I might not favor, but looking at the constitutionality of it, it's important to recognize the fairness. Another good example, one of the best features of the House Bill 199 in its current form is that it provides universal pre-K right now. I love universal pre-K. That is easily the best part of this bill. It is better than what we have right now in statute. But the universal pre-K, as provided by this legislation, is unconstitutional. So even though I really like it, Mr. President, it's an unconstitutional way to provide universal pre-K. You have to do it through public funded opportunities, through schools, through the districts, through traditional models. You can't just hand out the money. So I have a lot of concerns, Mr. President, with the way this legislation is structured, but I just encourage the body to realize there is an alternative on the table. The status quo, $6,000 per student, means
5
tested
minutes.
at 150%, is available to the body. On and against.
Thank you. Let's go to Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You know, I come at this kind of from a different angle. In my hometown, Mr. President, we have two coffee shops on Main Street. And they're very different coffee shops. There is one coffee shop where they want this bill very bad. And the other coffee shop, they don't. I mean, it is literally that split. And they are red and blue, and they are all the differences that you can imagine. And that didn't used to be. I don't quite know how we got there. And it's kind of the same with churches. You know, Mr. President, if you don't like your church, you form your own church and you split off. I guess that's okay. That's churches, that's your right. But does it have to be the same with schools? And is there some value to having a common, shared experience as a backbone of education? Now, there was a time, Mr. President, when everybody in this room stayed at one hotel in Cheyenne, except for the folks that got to go home. All the events were there. When you debated your friend, your colleague in the day, you saw him that night at the function, or you saw him at breakfast the next morning, and you had to deal with it. And we got along. And you just put another day behind you. There's something to be said for connecting all of that with our school experience too. And you know, we had a chance to honor an author from my class, my high school class. And I sponsored a little reception for her. She'd written a great book, happened to be about Sinks Canyon. And we invited people in the community that came. There must have been 30, 40 people there. Mr. President, there were 10 people from our shared kindergarten class, Mrs. Rosica's morning class. Now that's unbelievable, and it's really kind of stupid small town thing. But we're still in that community. Some of them are red, some of them are blue, but we had that shared experience, and we graduated together. And there was something to be said for that. There's something to be said for having Republican children go to school with Democratic children, with Jewish children go to school with Catholic children, with Baptist children. There's something to be said for that, Mr. President. This common experience that made America. Now we throw that out the window. We have our own caucuses. We subdivide. We can't get along for nothing. And everything is life or death. This election is so important because it's got to go in this direction. And it's so bad for everybody else. I hate all that. I hate all that, Mr. President. The bottom line irony, we spend a lot of time in here trying to be the school board for the state of Wyoming. Apparently we screwed it up, so that and now we're going to fund an alternative that we don't put any restrictions on. And I am concerned about people that have decided to drop out and do their own education, which I'm all for. There are amazing children that get great educations through private schools and through homeschooling. But the financial incentive shouldn't be one of them. And I know they're all saying they don't want this money, but I've heard from some of them that say they want this money. We've talked about the constitutionality. Mr. President, I took an oath to the Constitution. I am persuaded that this is unconstitutional. And I appreciate your time, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Case. Senator Scott, for your second time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to ratchet the discussion down a little bit in terms of the fervor of it and talk a little bit to the finances. The figure we've got here on what it's going to cost to educate some of these children in private schools is $7,000, and that is based on what those private schools are now charging in the way of tuition. The figures we've got for what it costs in the state system are better than twice that. Now, understand that there won't be a direct savings for the state system because of the rolling average system, Mr. President, that will protect the state funding for a while. But you can't, we aren't going to have a big increase in funding here because it's offset by an even larger decrease in funding in the long term. There will be an increase because of the pre-K, Mr. President, and that's something we're needing to do to improve our abilities to teach reading overall. So that's worthwhile. But, Mr. President, I've been a little concerned by some of the rhetoric here saying this is going to cost us a lot more. No, in the long run, this is going to be a cost savings, and we can debate forever why the savings is so large. Some of it is some features that we'll still wind up paying for, some of the special ed things. But there is clearly a significant savings in the long term, Mr. President. So that is one more, and remember that the children involved in achieving this savings will be doing that because the parents think it'll be better for their children. So for all those reasons, Mr. President, on and for this bill.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Let's go over to Senator Dockstader for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Probably one of the biggest misconceptions, all the emails pouring in, that somehow we were taking from school funding. That was misconstrued all along the way. We are not. We've got general fund dollars here, and we already got most of it packed away and ready to go. I'd like to address something new for our schools who are worried about this. I don't think they have to worry. Our strong school districts are just that. They're strong for a reason. I got 3 school districts that I represent who are very strong in the academics, the arts, the athletics. They don't need to worry. This bill will step in and fill a niche and help some who are being missed and offer the school choice. That's what we should stand for. Our schools will be just fine. This reaches out and takes care of a group of students that we might miss otherwise. On and for the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Driscoll for your second time.
Mr. President, for my second time, a couple things, folks. Look at my left hand. This is an apple. Look at my right hand. This is an orange. We're talking about savings. We're not doing savings. Folks, we're spending money out of the general fund on this side and the school foundation accounts over here. So whatever savings you have or wherever it goes, they go to different funds, different places. It's what I talked about earlier, is this is a path that we have now broken into the general fund, and we're funding out of the general fund. I think it's constitutional, and here's why. It's a scholarship. We're not funding education. We're funding a scholarship. And I think it's a legitimate route to go, and it's a legitimate way to go. Now I'm going to go back to some past deals real quick, and I probably shouldn't get there, but we talked about the charter schools and what the promises were. And it's a warning for what happens with this bill, with sideboards and going forward. We did. Charter school bill was mine. We came in, we promised it was going to be cheaper, and it would have been. But they forced us into the K-12 model. The K-12 model we have now. They said, look, you have to pay teachers this. You have to provide a facility of this type, on and on and on. And they said, you have to do that. And you just heard, well, we jumped and we had to go to the K-12 model. Well, folks, we didn't. There wasn't a lawsuit. There wasn't one. They never gave it a chance to come out and see if we actually could do it for less, because we wanted to educate in a different way. And that's what this bill does as well. You guys are listening to me kind of talk both sides of it. Mine is, give them a chance to do it and do it their way. Don't try to force them in to the model that we're all used to. Give them a chance to educate, to use a scholarship to educate kids in a different way. It's not always apples and oranges. It's a different route and a different method. And my deal is let them do it. Don't try to force this model straight right into our K-12 model again. That's what they did with the charters. I would love to undo part of it. We ought to be able to teach in different ways, different methods, and use different facilities. I realize what the court decisions were, but I also believe when you willingly go to a school that's a different quality, you don't need brand new brick and mortar schools. You can do it in something different. I'm looking at one of the guys that helps do the classical academy here in town. They chose to go to a school that doesn't cost $30 million. We can do this, folks, but we have to, in this body, have to say we allow other methods to be different than our K-12 model. They want us to look just like them. We shouldn't. Give them a chance, but also watch your checkbook, because it is a tough deal. We are funding apples and oranges, general fund versus foundation. May save the foundation over time, but it certainly isn't going to help the general fund, because if this works, we're not going to be here for 30 million. 4 years here from now, we're going to be here for 60 or 80 million. And it may save on the other end, but it doesn't go in the same pots of money.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else? Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, every child is created on purpose, with purpose, for purpose. I strongly believe this. Let me say that again, Mr. President. Our children are created on purpose, with purpose, for purpose. Mr. President, our job is to make sure that our kids get an education so that they are educated to their abilities and talents, so that when they reach adulthood, they're able to go out, they're able to be productive members of society in the workforce, and that they're able to reach their full God-given potential in this life. That's our job for our children, our next generation, for Wyoming's future, Mr. President. It's our children. This is what this bill is about. It's not about a good system or a bad system. It's about what is the education environment that our children are going to best learn in. Mr. President, that looks different for every child. And nobody knows that in this room better than I, Mr. President. I have 4 kids. They're all in different education environments and settings because it's about meeting their needs and where they're going to best learn. We've debated this bill. We've debated the merits of this bill. We've amended this bill to what I believe is better than when it came over to us. We've addressed many concerns that the citizens have had, Mr. President. Currently, Mr. President, a child at 150% of poverty level, they can have that opportunity to learn in the environment that best meets their needs. But Mr. President, at 151% of poverty level, you can neither afford education choice nor can you get a scholarship. That's not equitable. That's not okay. That is not us taking care of our next generation. So, Mr. President, I ask that for our next generation, for our kids who are created on purpose, with purpose, for purpose, that we do what's in the best interest of the future of Wyoming and our next generation, and that we vote aye on this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Hicks?
Mr. President, I'll try to bring us home. For some of us that have been here a while, we used to have a past president, longest-serving member of the Senate Education Committee, sit back in there in a corner, and I always remember some of the wisdom from our predecessors, and this debate reminds me of one of the things that he always shared with the body, and that was is 50% of my friends are for this bill, 50% are against this bill, and I want to make one thing clear to this body. I'm voting with my friends on this bill.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Hat tip to old Hank. Let's go to Senator Schuler for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President, for my second time. I think we're at that point in time where we've heard enough probably debate and everyone's probably made up their mind. I didn't really make up my mind till yesterday after some different amendments, maybe even the day before. I was still kind of hoping we could get this where I could feel comfortable with it and that maybe that it wouldn't be maybe a constitutional issue. But I just want to just throw one more thing out. I have a couple of family members that teach in one of the states that have opened up Universal. And one of them is in a charter school doing really well. The other one is in a virtual school, and they're really struggling because they're having to pick up a lot of these kids whose parents wanted to take advantage of the Universal, and then it didn't work out so well, and now they're back trying to get caught up in this virtual school. My family member said that some of them are behind 2 years already in that short amount of time. So I just want to put it out there as a little crystal ball. We all know everybody's going to vote a certain way, but in a couple years, I just hope that if this does go through and it doesn't get hung up in the courts or whatever, that we understand that we have great public schools in Wyoming, and they will come through and they will take care of issues with those folks who maybe had never had homeschooled before and wanted to try this, and maybe it didn't work out so well. Our public schools are going to take care of those kids because they accept everybody. You know, they take everybody, no matter what. And I just want to put a plug in for our public schools. They do an amazing job. And I think if this goes through and it doesn't get hung up and it moves forward, in a couple of years, we're going to have some public school folks that are going to have a lot of extra work on their plate. But you know what? They'll do great because that's what they do. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be quick. The one thing I haven't heard today or yesterday so much out of the debate, it's school of choice. It's the parents' responsibility to educate their children. The parent should be able to choose how and when their children are educated. And if there's consequences with those choices, there's consequences. We as adults make choices all the time. And I know I personally suffer some consequences here and there from bad decisions. And I also have a lot of good things from good decisions. But the emphasis on this bill wasn't really a financial discussion as much as allowing parents to choose how to educate their children. So as we vote on this, I'd urge you all to keep that in mind. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. Senator Jones, over to you.
Mr. President, I've already shared my concerns about this bill, and I do recognize and appreciate the time and effort that everyone on both sides of this bill has spent. I do think this is a train that we can't stop. I think we have to realize that parents are bestowed with a fundamental right to direct how their child's upbringing and schooling goes. And I've talked with a lot of you in here. I do think that an interim topic to refine a lot of this bill is going to be mandatory to get my aye vote. And a lot of people have said they'll stand up with me and try to perfect these loopholes that we've created. It's a serious issue, but I think it ultimately comes down to the parents have the choice for what's right for their children. And I do think that we've missed a few things in this bill, and I hope that we can correct those over the interim.
Thank you, Senator Jones. All right, everybody's getting hungry. Magically, at 12:01, debate stops. House Bill 199, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? The chief clerk will call the roll.
Third reading roll call, House Bill 199. Anderson? No. Barlow? No. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? No. Crago? No. Crum? No. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French? Aye. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Olson? Aye. Pappas? No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. House Bill 199, 20 aye, 11 no.
House Bill 199, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, House Bill 199 has passed the Senate. Yes, hold- one sec. My screen isn't working here. There it goes. Senator Olson, you were up first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to take a moment, a personal matter, to explain my vote on House Bill 199. I did vote aye, and I want to explain my vote because I have been approached by members of the public, and I've been approached by members of this body asking if I have a conflict of interest on House Bill 199. For those of you that know, and so some of you probably don't know, but I founded a charter school here in Cheyenne, and I am a current board member of a charter school here in Cheyenne. And I just want to make it really crystal clear that I don't have a conflict on House Bill 199 because House Bill 199 does not direct any funding to any public charter school. The public charter school that I am affiliated with is a 100% publicly funded, tuition-free school and does not receive 1 cent under House Bill 199. So, Mr. President, I just wanted to explain my vote and make that clear for the public and the record.
Thank you, Senator Olson. Senator Dockstetter.
Mr. President, may I have privilege for a moment for a
You
group of
bet.
people patiently waited?
Privilege, or the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the Senate just hold their applause for a moment while I introduce you to a group of people. I'm going to introduce you, if you would stand, please, Mr. Hobbs. I'm going to introduce you to Star Valley Senior Game Warden James Hobbs. He was named the 2024 Shikar Sharia Wildlife Officer of the Year for Wyoming. There's one of these named in every state and Canadian province. The award given annually is for a wildlife officer whose efforts during the year display outstanding performance and achievement. And I'm just going to read what one of his senior officers said about him from the Game and Fish. As a passionate wildlife manager and relentless law enforcement officer and true spokesman for his community and the department, James is a pillar of the community and everything a game warden should be. Now let me have the rest of the party stand and then we'll acknowledge them. Joining him today is his wife Heather, please stand. And also joining him, please stand, Game and Fish Director Angie Bruce, Deputy Director Doug Grimmer, Chief Game Warden Dan Smith, and Jackson Regional Supervisor Brad Hovina. Please welcome them to the Senate.
Welcome to the Senate. Senator Case. Oh, sorry. Senator Hutchings, you good? All right.
We got to have a motion first.
Yeah, well, making sure there's no more privileges before I kick it to the majority leader. Looks like we're ready. Madam Majority Floor Leader, that clears the desk.
Mr. President, I move that we stand recessed until 2 p.m.
Recess till 2 p.m. Any announcements? Let's go over to Senator Barlow first.
Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, Social Services, will meet at 12:30 today to hear House Bill 121, Hospital Pricing Transparencies in Room 110. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, your favorite committee, Minerals, Business, Economic Development, will meet today upon noon recess about 12:30 in Capitol Extension Room W4. We'll hear 3 bills. House Bill 183, net metering amendments. That was a continuation from Valentine's Day. House Bill 181, engrossed funeral contracts, investment and bonding requirements. And House Bill 202, engrossed fast track permits act. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thought we were your favorite committee, actually.
You're all my favorites. You're like my kids. I can't.
Your
pick
committee
one.
number 7, Corporations, will continue our work upon adjournment today. 15 minutes after adjournment, we'll finish up House Bill 156, proof of voter residency registration qualifications, House Bill 173, engrossed independent candidate requirements, and House Bill 238, engrossed ballot harvesting prohibition. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Case. Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet at 12:30 upon this noon recess in W002 to consider 2 House bills, House Bill 289, Certificate of Need Repeal 3, and House Bill 111, Hit and Run Responsibility and Penalties.
Thank you, sir. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife Cultural Resources Committee, where all the fun takes place, will meet tomorrow morning, Mr. President, in Capitol Extension Room W4. That's the Wind River Room, to take up House Bill 211, engrossed hunting wildlife from vehicles. That's continued from yesterday. House Bill 275, engrossed treatment of animals. And we'll get a lot of help from those folks up in the balcony, Mr. President. So,
Thank you, sir. Senator French.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agricultural, State, and Public Lands and Water Resources, will meet tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. in the Capitol Extension Room 6 and online to discuss the following 3 bills. House Bill 219, engrossed county and municipal roads on state lands easements granted. House Bill 221, engrossed bighorn and domestic sheep relocation effective date repeal. And my favorite, House Bill 32, engrossed What is a Woman Act.
I'm sure the people in ag can figure that one out. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet at 12:30 to discuss House Bill 311, exemption for transported fuel and power sales amendments, House Joint Resolution 4, constitutional amendment, veterans property tax exemption, and House Bill 134, taxpayer funds, sexually explicit events prohibited. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Committee, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in room W002 and online to discuss House Bill 242, Manufacturers and Dealers of New Trailers, changes.
Thank you, sir. Vice President Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Appropriations will be meeting at noon tomorrow in room 113. I don't have a list because we're still being inundated with re-referrals, but by the end of today, before we adjourn, I will have a list for noon tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? You've all heard the majority leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senate will stand recessed until 2 p.m.